So were the numbers for the proposal, are they based on the current children in those schools or the districts that you're proposing? Because I know every school has children that are out of district. So when you're looking at the numbers for the classroom sizes, I mean, you took a ton of kids out of Mountain View district and you put them in Sharon and you put them in Callahan, you put them in Jeter Watson, but you didn't add anyone to Mountain View. So obviously that's going to leave room at Mountain View for other kids.
I don't think there are any Mountain View students that went to Jeter Watson, but there are.
You're right. I misspoke on that.
But you know, I think there were certain things that we knew made sense, like the kids from the Boiling Springs district going to Jeter Watson. You know, the Sharon, you know, expand Sharon out a little bit. There's no reason to have a private school out there. You know, there's no reason to have that small a school. You know, we for example, this year we combined Edgemont and Jeter Watson technically, but next year that's 6th and 7th that are currently at Jeter Watson are going to be coming high school. So you know, you're losing students there. Callahan is losing the Boiling Springs kids. It's naturally Indian Draft. You know, now the bus stops down in Indian Draft a ways in kind of a weird place. You know, I think there are a lot of little tweaks that I know there are some of these tweaks that I've been on this board for 11 years, or on the school board for 11 years, and I know there are people that have been talking about it for 11 years, wanting these little tweaks to happen and to right some wrongs. But
the numbers were based, I mean, our administration, central office folks largely, but in concert with pretty much everybody, that these are either real numbers of students we have today and or projections for what's to come next.
So what's your student ratio in the classrooms now versus the new proposed boundaries? How's it changing?
it's different for every school, the way it's changing. I mean, because like I said, Jeter Watson's now going to be K through 5, so it's definitely going to be a lot different there. And a lot of it's going to have to do with what happens on April 20th. You know, what's going to happen with our kindergarten numbers? You know, there are a lot of out-of-district kids right now kind of all over the system.
Right.
Once we start figuring out how many kids exactly are going to be in these, you know, I'm sure we're going to allow some kids to go out of district. And like this circumstance that the Malcolms were talking about, I mean, you know, we're not trying to make this hard on anyone. We just kind of want to do what's right for the majority of the people, and you know, it's hard. It's going to be hard I mean, it's definitely going to be hard for certain people in certain locations. I know I read your email, and your district's going to change as well as your parents' district's going to change, and it's, you know, that's a very unfortunate situation. But you might have neighbors that are excited that, you know, that their district's going to change.
I wouldn't say so,
And,
but
you know, it's a.
my big thing is when we moved back to the area, we bought for the Mountain View district, knowing our child care was in the Mountain View district. And now that that's changed, I mean, if we're able to get her into Mountain View, she's a neurotypical child. We don't have an IEP that we can fall back on to try and get her into where we want her to go. That leaves us at the mercy of you all if she's going to be allowed to go to Mountain View, or are we going to have to sell our house and move into the Mountain View district? But then is that going to change?
Believe me, I feel your pain. When I moved back here, I moved from Potts Creek to the house I grew up in, and I went to Boiling Springs, and at that time I had 3 stepchildren. One of them went to Boiling Springs for one year. One of them had to drive to Sharon every morning, and one just started the middle school. It was tough. You know, I know how it can affect people. It's going to affect a lot of people, and we're hoping that it has the least amount of effect on people.
Why are we doing kindergarten registration at the proposed boundaries? Every board I've been on, you work off your current policies, procedures, but here we are doing
So
kindergarten.
it's not to necessarily confuse the child. You take your kindergartner to their school to register, and they walk in and they get a little tour, and it's to make it easier on the student take them to one school knowing that we're maybe changing their boundary, or quite possibly changing and sending them to another school is confusing for a 5-year-old.
So I'll take my child to Callahan and apply for a boundary out of district and then say, Harper, actually, you're gonna go to this school. And when it's accepted.
If it were my child.
Going back to what Ms. Snead Johnson said, I mean, part of the balancing act that we have, and I think Jacob said it in his public comments, is this redistricting requires the board to balance the disruption of current boundaries, which we don't want to disrupt. It requires us to balance the size of the schools, which, if you ask any of our central office people, curriculum type people, they just assume, we just balance the schools uniformly. That would allow us to probably staff the schools more equitably, if you will. We would have similar numbers all across the board, but of course we have to also throw in the mix the transportation of that as well. So we've got 3 balls in the air when it comes to this, and what I wouldn't want to have happen as a board member is us make a decision that causes you to sell your home. I would never want to do that. So what I would encourage, what the conversation that we'll have over the next several weeks is what the plan looks like. We'll have tweaks, as Ms. Morgan was talking about, Ms. Agee spoke about. But then I think most of us up here are very agreeable to allowing a good amount of flexibility. But you just have to understand the boundaries that we're up against. As Mr. Wright alluded to, standards of quality requirements from the state of Virginia. If we have certain numbers of kids in certain situations, we have to put certain amount of staff there as a requirement. It's not an option for us. So if we run into a situation to where, let's just say, several families in your neighborhood all want to go out of district, and that triggers an SOQ type situation where the board may have to spend $250,000 to put extra staff in that school. So the board will have a decision to make on that end. But what I would love to be able to say is that you and everyone else in your situation will have the maximum amount of flexibility, but we still have to weigh a lot of the other things that we can't not consider, and particularly the SOQ requirements from the state, and then just staffing requirements. I mean, if we have to also consider our staff, because it's important. In theory, if we have more people in one school, we have less people in another, well, we can just grab staff members from the smaller school and put them in the bigger school, right? Not really. I mean, we can, but if you were the staff member that was being told you had to go this place or the other, you may have reservations about that. So there's several things we're considering, but I hope we get to a point where we can allow you and everyone else like you some flexibility so that your child can be where they're comfortable. And if that's where they've been going, or simply for convenience, as a matter of drop-off, for parents, grandparents, babysitters helping to pick up. I mean, we understand that. We do.
And I would just like to address number 10, because you're asking about what the effect would be on property taxes based on the age of the buildings in the school district. And I have to tell you that the age of the building that the education is happening in doesn't have any bearing on the education that the children are getting in that building. I know you're citing the age of Mountain View versus the age of Callahan.
Right.
And the education that any child's going to get at Callahan isn't going to make the property less valuable.
That was not the point of that. I'm saying if I were district in Callahan right now and went to sell my house, my property taxes would be lower because in the algorithm that the county uses, it will take that into account. And I do have a pretty good source for that.
The algorithm that the county uses for your taxes is based on your elementary school?
It's one of the factors if you
Because
call the
when Rolling Springs closed, my taxes definitely did not go down. And you laugh. I have a rental house that's 4 bedrooms. And you know how hard it is to rent a 4-bedroom house to a school where kids have to travel an hour and a half to get to an elementary school?
Well, I agree, they should have always
So,
been
I mean,
here, but-
that's one of my biggest things about this is, I'm sorry that it's an inconvenience for you, but there are people that kids that ride the bus 2 hours, you know, on the far ends of the county, and those are the kids I'm worried.
Oh,
You know, we have to worry about those bus rides that are just, you know, tremendous, and, you know, that's what we're fixing right now. I mean, we're fixing all kinds of things, I think, with this plan, and I'm very happy that everybody's kind of on the same plan, but, you know, it's been my concern for a long time that kids are riding a long time on that bus.
I agree, but at the same time, you said you're here for all the kids. So even the kid that lives down the street from the school should be considered.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why I'm all for neighborhood schools, and, you know, having Sharon and Callahan and all these different schools open, I think it's absolutely great, but we have to think about the big picture and everybody, and you know, the kid with the IEP that's going to struggle, they have to be first, you know, and we have to think about the kid that has to drive 2 hours, and, you know, the kid that drives past the school to get to the school, and all those things. You know, I think with all things considered, I mean, Alleghany County and Covington, we're huge. I mean, our land mass is humongous, and people, when we go to the school board conference, you know, the area I used to represent at Bowling Springs is the same size as all of Henrico County, and I bet you there's 7,000 buses in Henrico County, you know, and the fact that we can get all these kids bused and, you know, they're not spending so much time on the bus, and I think this is really going to save us a lot of time and energy, and help the quality of life for a lot of people.
And as far as wanting your kids to stay in Mountain View, with the outlook of the numbers being down at Mountain View, Linda, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there should be more openings for out-of-district children in Mountain View. Just for example, Gita Watson is going to be pretty full. If you're out of district with Gita Watson, that might be a little bit tougher one to get into, just in all reality. Because, I mean, if you look at Gita Watson's basically in the middle of everything.
Right.
So, you know, those.
There's a lot of folks that work in town too.
There's a lot of folks that work in town as well, but there's,
I think
it's just
that's
being the
really-
location of where that is, and there's going to be a denser population looking like at Gita Watson than at any of our other.
That was really I just want the numbers. Your population now, your anticipated numbers, so that you can see where the schools are.
But I hope, Jennifer, that we can make your concerns moot by the time we get past this. I understand why you have them, but I think overall, what I want you to leave with is the understanding that we understand that this is kind of stressful for you as a parent, the idea that you have to either literally pick up your home and move so you can be at your children can be at the school that they want to be, or you feel like you have to go through some sort of extended and excruciating process to make that happen.
Right.
We can't promise that we can allow lots of out-of-district transfers, but as Mr. Littleton said, it will come down to, in some cases, a numbers game, and the staff that we have there, because we can't afford to quickly overload one school or the other without making sure that we've prepared for that. So, you know, just bear with us as we go along, and understand we're trying our best to make everyone happy, even though we know that is impossible.
You'll never make everyone happy. Yeah, I've learned that.
But I think in the long run, if you're willing to be flexible, I think we're willing to be flexible to an extent.
Right.
As long as we can do it with, and like Mr. Littleton said, you know, Mountain View is going to have smaller numbers, so there is probably a good chance that out-of-district people can be at Mountain View. You know, and we're going to do our best to work with people with IEPs, and, you know, if parents want to drive kids to schools that they've been in, if that's possible, we're going to do our best. I mean, we have a very compassionate team that's going to, you know, do our best to make kids feel good, you know, make them feel at home. You know, we're trying to keep staff in the same places and familiar faces for people and kids, because I know that's important. So we're hoping that we can definitely do that. And you know, one of the things is, if your child starts at kindergarten in Mountain View, more than likely they're going to be able to go through all the grades at Mountain View, because those numbers are not going to change tremendously. You know, we're not going to get 15 of your second graders in probably. I hope we do. But, I think there's a chance that it could all work out. But we just can't make promises, and we just have to make sure that we don't make promises that we can't.
Did we filibuster you, Jennifer? Did you have anything else? I'm sorry.
It was a very well-written letter.
It was a very long.
Very thought-provoking
Yeah,
question.
do you do any editing work? Some stuff on that.
I'm booked up.
Mr. Bradley? Anyone else?
I just want to say one thing, nothing bad. Sorry. It's nothing bad. Hi, Allison Fox. I teach at Callahan. I know you all said you're looking out for the best interest of the kids. I just want to tell you, I teach 4th grade, so I have a lot of kids like, I'm going to be going to this school next year, I'm going to go to this school. Our kids are already so resilient to it. They're like, oh, I get to see my friend at that school. So I just want to thank y'all. I know it wasn't an easy process, but looking at my kiddos that are out in Potts Creek, it makes me gets a little easier knowing that they're not going to be on the bus for 2 hours. So, I mean, I can't thank y'all enough because I know it's not an easy process. But our kids are already so resilient to it. So I think if adults can be just as resilient, we're going to be on the right path.
That's right. Thank you.
Anybody else? I declare this public hearing closed.